Hello there, welcome. In this lesson we're going to talk about chord construction, a companion to my Chord Construction 101 on the website robhig.net. End of shameless plug, but we're going to follow along with this. So if you want to print it, go ahead. The lesson starts with a C major scale. We're just using key of C today because key of C major has no sharps or flats. So the scale that you see there in the tab and those all have degrees. We talked about this in a lesson on scales. So this is my first degree, second degree, third degree, fourth degree, fifth degree, sixth degree, seventh degree, eighth degree. And that's what we're going to cover in this lesson. We're not going to go into ninths and 11ths and 13ths. We'll do that another time. So, with that said, your basic triad meaning 3-note chord, consists of the first, third, and fifth notes of the scale. Third note, and fifth note. So if I play a C chord, those chord tones will be in order. Here's the first tone, C. Here's the third tone, E. Here's the fifth tone, G. Now I can play those in any order I want. And I can, what we call, stack them in any order I want. That's what's in the next example on the sheet. But that is to say that if I play C, E, and G together, that's a C chord. Also, if I play E, G, and C together, that's a C chord. If I play G, C, and E together, if I do it correctly, that's also a C chord. So C, C, C. All of those are C chords. If I show up at a gig and I'm asked to play C, I just played them. Pay me. So, to move on from there, again, it's the first, third, and fifth notes of the scale. Well, by the same token, if you want to play a minor chord, it's the first, third, and fifth tones of the minor scale. The minor scale, the only difference in the first 5 notes is the third degree. So, there's major. If I flat that third degree, there's minor. So, all the rules about chord construction apply the same to major as they do to minor. It just depends on what scale you're playing over. So, that is one way to look at a triad. First, third, and fifth notes of the scale. Another way to look at chord construction is by thirds, which are by far the most common harmony in Western music. Thirds are every other note. Every other note. So C, when I play this, is 3 notes away from E, and G is 3 notes away from E. But there are 2 different kinds of thirds. The first one I played for you was a major third. I went from C, I'll do it on one string so you can see, it's 2 whole steps. So that's a major third. But when I went from E to G, that's called a minor third. The major third is 2 whole steps. The minor third is 1.5 steps. There's my half step, there's my whole step. So 1.5 steps is minor, 2 whole steps is major. So if I use the thirds method of constructing chords, I'm going to have, for a C major chord, I'm going to have a major third on the bottom, C to E. I'm going to have a minor third on top of that, E to G. If I construct a minor chord in thirds, I'm going to have a minor third on the bottom, C to E flat, and a major third on top of that, E flat to G. So, that's constructing the same triad using thirds instead of using degrees of the scale. First, third, or fifth degree, major third plus minor third on top. Those are the formulas for a major triad. And that allows us to define a diminished triad. So a diminished triad, what we're going to do is we're going to flat the third and we're going to flat the fifth. We're going to diminish those values in the chord by half a step. So when we have a diminished chord, I have a situation where I've got a minor third, I'll do it here so I've got room, and then a minor third on top of that. Not the kind of chord you want to strum around the campfire for measures at a time, but a wonderful chord nonetheless, usually used as a passing chord. A much more popular fingering of that chord. And listen to how it goes into the next chord. Like that. The diminished chord, if you harmonize the major scale, is based on the seventh tone of the major scale. So I just played the seventh, a chord based on the seventh tone, and it resolves back to the first tone of the scale. Just as if I played the scale, and then it resolves to the end of the scale. So that's a beautiful use for diminished chords. The other kind of chord that you can build in thirds is an augmented chord, and that is a major third on the bottom and a major third on top of that. So I have major third, I'll do it in C, and then I have a major third there. This is a very popular chord for a turnaround in a blues, using it on the 5 chord when it turns around back to the beginning of the verse, such as the beginning of Stormy Monday. Like that. So there's your augmented chord. That's what it sounds like. Here's our diminished chord. That's what it sounds like. So there are 2 methods of defining the triads. Just review real quick. First, third, and fifth notes of the scale. And then major and minor thirds. The stacking of major and minor thirds. So that gives us basically our C chord, our C minor chord, our C diminished, our C augmented. The next thing we can do with major chords, or minor chords, is we can suspend the third note of the scale. I misspoke before. You can do this with either major or minor. Makes no difference. So I'm going to suspend the third note of the scale with either the second note or the fourth note. So we'll stay in C. There's my second note in the key of C. It's a D. It's the next letter of the alphabet. So here's a C chord with the E in it. Now here's a C chord, a C sus2. Sounds beautiful when you go from the sus2 back to the chord. And notice I don't have an E in this chord. So it's a sus, because I'm substituting the second note of the chord for the third note in the scale. Likewise, I can use the fourth note and substitute the fourth note for the third note in the scale. And that leads me to a sus4. And in this case, in the case of C, 1, 2, 3, 4, there's my fourth note. It's an F. So I add an F to the C chord. And you can't see it right here, but I'm dinking out that E because I want to have a sus chord. If I wanted both notes in the chord, that's not a sus chord, that's a plus chord, and we'll talk about that real quick. So in the sus, I am substituting the third note of the scale with either the second note, the D in this case, or the fourth note, the F in this case. This chord would be spelled C sus2. This chord would be spelled C sus4, or just simply C sus, because it's the most common of the sus's. So if somebody just says it's a sus, chances are they're talking about it's a sus4 chord. That's just a beautiful melody. There is other, well, like in D, a lot of beginners know this one. Same thing. D. Replace the third note of the scale, which is F sharp, with E, which is the second note, sus2. Come back to the chord. Replace the F sharp, which is the third note of the scale, with a G, which is the fourth note of the scale, and that's a sus4. So, That gives you sus chords. So that's the end of triads. Those are all 3-note chords. What I wanted to say to you before, and I didn't get to say it, when I played this C sus4 chord, and I dinked out the E string, that's a C sus4. If I included the E string, so now I have both the 4th degree and the 3rd degree in the chord, that's a C plus 4. Not a C, a C plus 4. If I did the same thing with a D, and I'll let that E ring out. Sorry about that. Anyway, probably wouldn't use that chord that often, but that would be a C plus 2. Now, there's a great C plus 2 located right here, though, if I put the D on top of the chord. Very popular song back in the day. So the middle chord, that one, that's going to be written as C plus 2 because I have both the E and the D in it. So I've added the 2nd note of the scale to the major chord, C plus 2. When you see a C plus, I neglected to talk about this earlier, I apologize for that. When it's just a C with just a plus sign, that's an augmented chord. That's a C augmented chord. So if you have a C with a plus sign only, that's an augmented chord. If you have a C with a plus 2 or a plus 4 or a plus 6, those are chords where we're playing the full chord and adding that degree of the scale, either the 2nd degree, the 4th degree, or the 6th degree in that example. And by the way, I forgot to tell you about diminished chords. When you see them in a book, they'll say like C, D-I-M, or C with a degree sign in the more modern books, C with a degree sign. So, that is the end of the triad section in this lesson. From here on, what we're going to do is we're going to add chords. We're going to add, not chords, we're going to add notes to the chord. So the first one, going back to my lesson and see where we are, because I've lost my place. And I'm just going to keep my place lost. The first of the 4-note chords we're going to encounter is simply a C6. So what does that mean? It just means we add the 6th note of the scale to the C chord. So, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la. There's A, that's the 6th note of the scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So in a C chord, if I add an A to it, that's a C6. A more popular way of playing it, or the way we hear more, depending on what kind of music we listen to. So, like I like blues a lot. This is a great tune, like in a swing shuffle. Like that. It has a nice kind of horn sound. Matter of fact, a lot of times when you hear horns, you'll hear 6 chords in the horn section. And then the last one we're going to talk about in this lesson is the 7 chord. Now, when I play a C7, when I learned it when I was a kid, that was a C7. But what note did I add? Did I add a B? No, I added a B flat. So, it's also known as the C dominant 7. There's a scale called the dominant scale, where the only difference between the dominant scale and the major scale is that the 7th note is flatted. So this is a C7, and it sounds kind of funky. And then the other 7 chord is called a C major 7, and that is where I am adding the 7th note of the C major scale to the chord, or whatever key you're in, but it's the same principle. So instead of adding that flat 7 for that funky sound, I'm adding the actual 7th note of the major scale, which gives it a much different kind of sound, a haunting, beautiful kind of sound. So that's a C major 7. Here's a C major 7 with a G in the bass, beautiful. Just real pretty. So anyway, and when you see those written out in music, The C7 will just be a C with a 7 next to it. Or a C minor 7 would be a C M with a C lowercase m with a 7 next to it. A C major 7 would be spelled capital C, capital M 7. So capital M for major, lowercase m for minor. Okay. Same with Roman numerals. If we use Roman numerals for chords, we use uppercase Roman numerals to delineate the first chord in the scale, the second chord. If it's minor, we use lowercase Roman numerals. So the same thing happens. And some of those more modern books, the same book that would have that diminished sign being as a circle, or an augmented sign being as a plus. Well, actually, that's not true. I shouldn't say that. The augmented sign is a plus. But getting back to the major 7, sometimes you'll have a triangle. So it would be a C with a lowercase triangle and a 7, and that would denote C major 7. So we've covered triads, which were major and minor triads, plus our suspended chords, were all triads. And then we covered 6 chords, which added the 6th note of the scale to the chord. 7th chords, which added the flatted 7th of the scale to the chord, and major 7. So I hope you've enjoyed this lesson. I've enjoyed recording it for you. Enjoy. Bye-bye.